Yeah, how's it going, Torsten? How are things going out there?
Yeah, everything is it's going as well as can be expected. Obviously, we're still somewhat in lockdown here, and we're just doing the best that we can to keep active and to keep the band attention as high as we possibly can. So yeah, I mean, I think Ireland's past the worst part. I think there's vaccines coming in now here, and I know it's not too good in India at the moment, which is the reason I know that we're doing this interview here today to raise some attention for the problems that are over there, which I'm sorry to hear.
I guess one of the first things I wanted to ask you about was about the live album that's coming out next week, and it was recorded in January, right? So yeah, what was the process like for that?
So we applied for an Arts Council grant, and we thought since we couldn't play All Is Violent and All Is Bright live, because everything was obviously shut down, we thought it might be a good idea to do a live version of that album since we had everything rehearsed. And we went into Ireland's one of the most famous studios in Ireland called Wimble Lane Recording Studios in Dublin, where U2 and all the other big bands have recorded in the past. And the idea was simple: to go in for 3 days and to record as much material as we possibly could, all in one take. The first day we did some stuff from the Epitaph album, and then we did Saturday we did All Is Mind, All Is Bright, and we did also some of the Ghost Tape stuff live as well. And then Sunday was more or less we did the Premier Guitar interview and stuff like that. And yeah, it turned out quite well. I mixed it here in the studio that I'm in here, and the idea was really keep it exactly as we had it in the room, for better or for worse. And we had also video footage showing us playing. As it was kind of a modest setup. It wasn't like we put a lot of money into the video end of it, but we wanted just to have documentation that it was all done in one take. And yeah, I'm very pleased overall. We couldn't obviously get all the parts as a 4-piece. You would have maybe needed 7 people to get every single part that you would have liked in it. But I think as a live version of the record, I think we're very pleased with it.
Yeah, I mean, and when you revisit a record like that, and it's a record obviously that God as an Astronaut plays, in quite a large part at your performances, there's always songs off the album that are at your shows. So, but when you revisit it for this sort of recording, I guess I wanted to know what are some of the things that you perhaps maybe notice about your own songwriting in a way, if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting going back. I mean, obviously we've been playing a lot of these songs live for a number of years, and we've made subtle changes, tempo changes, maybe to suit the live environment a little bit more. A few slight structural changes, things that we maybe felt were, at least in a live environment, maybe too repetitive, or parts maybe not long enough. So we did adjust a few parts. Off the top of my head, I think we changed the end of All Is Violent, All Is Bright. We made sure that the heavier part was just a little bit longer. The record always felt a little bit too quick, and it was over before you could really get into it. And we knew from playing that song live for over the years that people were really enjoying the heavier section in that song. And it was such a long build up to get there. It was a shame for it to be over in 30 seconds. So we made that longer. Fragile, we added some harmony guitar lines that weren't there before. We've added some, I think it definitely distanced. Jamie added actually some. He always felt that the song was going around in circles, and he came up with this lovely subtle counter melody line that wasn't there before. And Fireflies, we include the improvisational part of what we did live, and it was interesting because initially that was written with Niels playing the arpeggio bass, and we would have left the bass parts out live. So this time Jamie was playing the bass arpeggio lines on with a capo on the bass, the way Niels would have done it, but through an orange amplifier this time instead of a bass amp. And after that, I think there was a few songs we hadn't played actually too often, at least. I think we played it once. Dust and Echoes. We kind of did a slightly different version of that song, just to kind of lend itself more to the live environment. It was a much more I guess a more noisy kind of approach to that song versus the more ethereal ambient version that was on the original record. When Everything Dies, yeah, again, we added a harmony guitar line to the riff. I think the reason we did that was on record's a lot shorter. Live again, it up to kind of playing that part longer. But then there was a kind of an issue where when we made it longer, it felt vibe-wise, it felt right, but musically it felt like it was kind of running around in circles. So Jamie came up with a nice harmony guitar line on that one as well. Remembrance Day, we changed a couple of things on that. We changed a couple of the piano notes at the beginning. It just felt we needed to make it just more our own. It just felt derivative of other things that that bugged us for a while. So we changed that, and Lloyd had come up with some nice keyboard lines, counter melody lines. So I'm definitely happy with that. What else did we do? We did Infinite Horizons was a challenge, to say the least, because initially the intro is actually a reverse, my guitar line in reverse. So I had to try off how to play that in reverse. I tried to do it one way where I play it first and then use a reverse pedal, but it never quite, couldn't get the timing quite right. So I had just learned it off as best I could, playing it in reverse. And then, you know, it was a bit of a challenge, but I was happy enough with the way it came out. It's definitely slightly different than the original record. Hard to say. I'm hoping that we gave it enough, we did justice to it. That's all I can say. That's really it. I can try to think if there's anything else. Suicide by Star, we included the live ending that we would have done where it's kind of everything's going kind of in a 32 and then we break it down. So we did, that all seemed to work well live. And yeah, apart from that, the initial record would have been written with maybe amp simulation equipment. So it was interesting using real live amplifiers, but I did have to get my Stratocaster back out for that. And I've been using Gretsch guitars for a long time, but if you want to get that Osbourne sound, it can only be a Fender Stratocaster. So that was important for me. And it was interesting. I mean, really enjoyed it. It you know, it was nostalgic for us to a certain, you know, to play it all again, and to mix it again was kind of, even though it's a different version of the record, but it was still brought back many memories. And yeah, we really had a good time with it, and it was great, as I said, to play and to do it all in Wimbledon recording studios, which is something that normally we wouldn't have had the budget to do something like that. But with the Art Council's help, it was something that was something that's special, that will be remembered for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's really something. And and coming to Ghost Tapes number 10, like, I mean, because I think I sort of picked up that you were saying a little bit about how, like, you know, like, even when you recreated for the live album, that it was just, you know, like the album has, the performance of it has just gotten heavier for you guys. And Ghost Tapes number 10 obviously seems to have like a lot of intensity to it. You know, it has definitely, like, you know, a lot more heaviness to it. So yeah, and you know, it was out in February. So how do you feel it's been received so far?
Yeah, I think it's been received very well overall. Obviously, when you put music out, you know, there's such a wide variety of opinions today, especially, you know, just at the touch of a mouse, people can leave their opinions. But overall, I think it's probably been more positive than our last few albums. I still really love Epitaph, but this album's definitely gone down a little bit better than Epitaph, and probably better than Helios Erebus too. So I think, yeah, it's definitely, you know, critically, I think it was well received. But the most important thing is how the fan base receive it. And I think overall, I would say it's very positive for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like people always talk about how bands will sort of talk about how, like, this album is heavier or this album is more intense, and you know, those kind of wordings always go out and obviously signal a different kind of message, like, or you know, they sort of create a, I guess, preconceived notion before people hear the record. So I wanted to hear from you, like, do you feel there are some cliches that you'd like to avoid, or that you have avoided when, you know, you say that you've made a heavier record?
I think for us, it's always a case of, you know, what inspires you to make music in the first place. And for us, you know, not being able to tour for such a long time and being able to not been able to, just do shows. It's been very frustrating for us to sit here, and I think intensity is something that we just naturally felt that way. We had to kind of get it out of our system. Just as before that epitaph, we were mourning our 7-year-old cousin's death, and the life shapes the kind of records that we make, and the next record could be completely different, so you can never tell what's next. I don't even know what's next because I haven't started writing it yet, but we just go with what we feel. It's definitely a more intense record. It's definitely more, I think we wanted to pay kind of a tribute to live as well, because it wasn't happening, and we thought, why not do the best we can and make a real live sounding record. We've never done it to that extent, with the exception now of All Is Fine, All Is Bright live, but up until that point, that was this is probably the most live that you can get, just amps and guitars and everything loud, and we'd embraced amplifiers again. It's probably the first time we've used amplifiers in years, so it was with the whole lockdown and everything, we just had a lot of fun again, is just making a big racket of noise. And but yeah, so no, overall, it definitely captures our mood. And the next single that's coming out is Barren Trees, which is probably the most emotive song on the record. I think for some, if people weren't into the too intense side of it, I think this is probably their favorite song. The video is excellent, and it's coming out, I think, next week. And I'm really excited about that. The video is probably the best video that I think that we're going to be releasing for this project. And yeah, I mean, that's it. I think we try to avoid a few things that I guess the quiet to loud thing we try to avoid. I think it's post-rock crowd like to call it crescendo core, or whatever they want to call it. And my understanding of it is you start quiet and you start building it up and then it explodes. So we wanted to avoid that. And you can see, it's pretty much heavy from the get-go for the majority of the material. It doesn't there's no ambient guitar parts that just then explode. So we wanted to avoid that. We wanted to have arrangements that we felt weren't predictable. Oh yeah, I knew that part was going to come next. And if you can see something like a drift, it actually ends off lighter than the heavier parts are in the middle. So we were really conscious of trying to make sure that it wasn't a predictable arrangement. We still wanted to make, it still had to be melody. It still had to have, emotiveness there. And the end of a drift is a good example with the vocals and the pianos and stuff like that, and it was the first time we actually recorded a real live piano as well, rather than just using MIDI. Burial was really the aftermath of the Epitaph album. It's really the song I think links the two albums up. And I guess, with loss, once you accept it, anger does set in, and there's a little bit of anger in Burial. And a little bit, definitely more of a darker, I think one of the darkest songs on that album. In Flux really is just something, everything feels chaotic and you're trying to kind of get your head around things. And that was the idea of that song. Spectres is, I guess it's a fun track. It's, we got the amps up and, we had some fun with that song. It's not exactly a, too deep of a song, but it sounds great live, and it's got the riff and everything sounds really good. A bit of a shoegaze, heavy rock vibe, I guess, going on with that one. And Fade, I really like, that's probably my favorite, I think, on the album, because it's so chaotic. I love the bass line. It's such odd timing. It's really hard. The timing signatures are really, really weird on that song. Took me a while to get used to it, I must say. After that, we had Barren Trees, which is probably the most emotive of it, and I think it's a nice organ line, and good. And the only song with proper vocals on it too. Mixed quiet though, but there's lyrics and vocals in that. And then we had Joe Quayle, helped us with Luminous Waves. Again, probably more what people might have expected from God Is an Astronaut in the past, more of an ambient kind of textural thing. But we didn't want to do where it went ambient and went heavy. So we said, look, just keep this as one thing, rather than always kind of doing the predictable thing where you kind of build something up all the time. It doesn't, sometimes you just don't have to build it up. And we've done things like that in the past with First Day of Sun, of course, and different songs. But this was done with an acoustic guitar, so it was a little bit different, and we had some live cello there as well, so which was great that Joe helped us out with that. Not sure if I'm leaving any of the songs out, but yeah, that's off the top of my head.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Torsten, like specifically with the title, like I wanted to ask, I feel like Ghost Tapes number 10 sort of has a little bit of understatedness to it. You know, it's a little bit subtle. You know, it's got a number to it, which, you know, like I guess may throw some people off. So like, what was the significance behind it?
I think Ghost Tapes initially, after the whole epitaph thing, I just felt just a kind of eeriness. It just got me thinking in general, where you have people that you know and you love every day in your life suddenly gone, disappeared, and kind of I felt like a ghostly kind of presence. So we were in that kind of mindset of kind of ghosts of the past, essentially, that kind of vibe. And we wanted to kind of pay a bit of, I guess, a tribute to those people as well, and the people that come and go in our lives that are, after a while you think were they even ever there at all. So I think that was kind of half of the mood that we were in. Other thing was our 10th album. We did turn A Moment of Stillness into an album years later. So this is our 10th album, and Ghost Tapes 10 is also about it's a tape that the US used against the Vietnamese to scare them in the jungle, pretending that their dead fallen brothers are warning them to go away. So I guess it was a bit of a, I don't know, slight tongue-in-cheek thing to it, so that we included that in it as well. So that was kind of the gist, I think, of Ghost Tapes 10. I just think it suits this kind of presence of something coming for you in some of the songs, and then of course of the people that we've left behind. So that was the idea of the title.
Yeah, very, very cool. And lastly, of course, I wanted to ask you about India, because I suppose, God as an Astronaut has performed in India. You made your debut a few years ago. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted, by way of a message for your fans in India, like, would you like to share something?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, first of all, we had a great time playing in India, and we did not expect that kind of audience that would know our music. We were probably one of our favorite shows to be able to go over there and play, and we're hoping that everybody over there, everybody, not just our fans, are staying safe and doing their best to isolate while this pandemic is happening. It's a scary situation, and we know that India's got, I mean, there's a large population over there. It's very hard to look after the people like we can here in Ireland, which there's only 4 million people living here in Ireland. It's a big difference, but it's tough, and we really hope that our fans are staying safe and that we can pull through this, and that we hope that we can get back maybe within the next year or so and play India again in front of you guys. And as I said, everybody on behalf of the band, we're really thinking about you guys over in India right now.